Church beg for 5 minutes. Millionaire CEO's amazing act of kindness exposes a hidden love transformation. James Carter sat alone in the dimly lit living room of his childhood home, the air heavy with memories that clung to the walls like faded paint. The clock ticked louder than ever, reminding him of the bills he couldn't pay, the house that felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. He squeezed the small box in his lap, a relic of his mother's life, uncertainty gnawing at his insides. Without her, the once vibrant space now echoed only despair. Each memento he pulled from the box was tinged with grief, layered with longing. A worn-out scarf, a yellowed photograph of holidays long past. They drowned him in sorrow, each item a reminder of what he had lost. As he rummaged deeper, a letter slipped from between the fibers of an old quilt. Its edges were frayed, the ink faded but still discernible. His pulse quickened as he read, "The gallery was our heartbeat, the town's soul. We must keep it alive." Hope, and an odd dread, filtered through him like a ghost flickering between existence and oblivion. The old Zeller Art Gallery, once a haven for creativity, had been buried under family debts. Could he breathe life back into it? Before he could fully grasp the weight of his discovery, James was hit by a wave of self-doubt. How could he, a public school teacher struggling to make ends meet, dare to reclaim something so grand? The thought felt pretentious, like meddling in a future he had no right to touch, a futile dream. But the nagging thought of his mother's wishes pulled at his heart like an anchor in a storm. Suddenly another voice, a modern corporate lilt, entered his consciousness, shattering his reverie. Sophia Chen, he recognized her from the news. An ambitious CEO whose path was paved in luxury but devoid of connection. She had returned home and curiosity brewed within him. What did a person like her know about struggle? Yet the pull of her ambition was magnetic, and he found himself inexplicably drawn to her idea of revitalization. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With that brief interruption fading, he felt the weight of his inner conflict tighten like a noose. Could she help him breathe life into the gallery? But having someone like her in his life meant accepting more than he thought he could handle. Her world was one fueled by power and wealth. As reality set in, a storm brewed within him. He was tethered by the chains of humble beginnings and the fear that he would forever remain unworthy in her eyes. Days passed, and as the gallery opening neared, fears copulated in his mind. Would she leverage her family ties to save the gallery while trampling his dreams? He envisioned her smug celebration of success if it came at his expense. Not even her laughter, sweet like music, could drown the danger lurking within this growing connection. Still, sparks ignited between them, a force that promised both joy and devastation. At that moment, as he clutched a brush and faced the blank canvas of his future, James felt a raw vulnerability. He was standing at a precipice where everything, his heart, his dream, his home, hung in fragile balance. Could love transcend the boundaries that threatened to consume them both? The ticking clock echoed louder than ever as he prepared for the unveiling of a past entwined with an uncertain future. His heart racing alongside the doubts that haunted him. James stood in front of the large wooden doors of the Zeller Art Gallery, the intricate carvings whispering secrets of the past. The gallery, once a symbol of artistic sanctuary, now stood in silence akin to his own heart, aching, longing for renewal. Each breath he took filled him with a mixture of nostalgia and trepidation. The memory of his mother's dream anchored him. It urged him to kickstart the gallery's revival, to rekindle the fires of creativity that once blazed within its walls. Yet encumbered by the weight of self-doubt, he hesitated. The specter of his mother's words echoed in his mind. urging action while simultaneously weighing heavily on his spirit. What if he failed? The gallery had crumbled under the burden of family debts. What made him think he could succeed where others had faltered? An overwhelming voice in his head shouted that he was unworthy of such an endeavor. An abrupt flash of memory interrupted his spiral of despair, Sophia's vivid smile unfurling like a banner of hope. She had offered help, but could he truly embrace it? Their worlds seemed so distinct, his life of struggle, her realm of adapted privilege. Questions about her true motives nagged at the edges of his mind. Was her interest genuine, or was it a project birthed from altruistic obligation? He shook his head to banish the doubts, remembering that her ambition had reignited something in him, a desire to seize control over his life. He held the letter tightly, determined to honor the legacy of the gallery and of his mother's passionate dreams. In doing so, he recognized a burgeoning sense of purpose within himself. Perhaps, he pondered, it was time to confront not only his fears, but the alluring gravitational pull that Sophia represented. With renewed resolve coursing through him, James decided to reach out. He left the gallery entrance behind and stepped into the bustling streets, energized by his own boldness. The thought of failure lingered, but could no longer deter him. He needed to have a conversation with Sophia. He needed clarification on their path forward without letting his insecurities cloud the potential that existed between them. The sun dipped low, casting a warm glow, washing him in gold as he stepped into a coffee shop where he had arranged to meet Sophia. As he entered, a rush of nervous anticipation engulfed him. Would she see him? Really see him, beyond the walls he had built? Would she understand the struggle it took to shed the expectations of a life bound by limitations? Their eyes met, and an electric jolt coursed through him. Sophia's gaze was steady, filled with intent and perhaps understanding. He noticed the slight furrow of her brow, the way her lips pressed together, as if she too was wrestling with uncertainties. He took a deep breath, the chatter of the cafe fading into the background. "Thank you for meeting me," he started, his voice slightly shaky but resolute. "I've been thinking a lot about the gallery and how we can bring it back to life, a shared dream that I believe we can achieve together." As he spoke, he felt a shift within himself. Maybe this was the moment he would break free from the doubt that had held him captive. As his words flowed, he saw a flicker of something, excitement, commitment, in her eyes. With each shared idea, their connection deepened, revealing a partnership that had the potential to surpass their assumptions. He could sense that both of them were stepping onto a path fraught with complexity, one that challenged their identities and what they held dear. But could he trust her completely in this journey? Just as they began sketching tangible plans for the gallery, Sophia's phone buzzed insistently on the table, pulling her attention momentarily away. "What do we do when our pasts threaten our present?" she asked, her expression polarized with doubt. James realized they both faced uncertain histories. He steeled himself for the conversation, knowing it might undo everything, or transform it into something unexpectedly brilliant. "Let's confront it together," he proposed, the determination shining through the cracks of his earlier hesitation. The clock chimed, punctuating the moment, both a countdown and a herald. As the cafe buzzed around them, James felt the weight of possibility hanging in the air, heavy and gloriously electrifying. The truth was that those shadows of self-doubt still lurked. Facing them was only the beginning. But as they leaned in to share hopes and fears, a nagging thought intruded. Was he prepared to explore the depth of the emotions brewing within this collaboration? A new dilemma loomed over them, one that went beyond the gallery. The moment of revelation had dawned, igniting something insatiable within him. Would they harness this energy, or would it consume them both? James's mind raced as he leaned forward, the vulnerability of his situation slowly morphing into fierce determination. He was acutely aware that this partnership with Sophia could either rescue him from self-inflicted isolation or expose the fragility he had carefully shielded from the world. The cafe's hum faded into an echo as if a barrier had formed around them, isolating their conversation from the clamoring noise. As he gathered his thoughts, he felt the heat of her gaze, sharp, yet inviting. It presented an opportunity, a chance to delve deeper into not only their fears but the very essence of their aspirations intertwined with the gallery's fate. How do we ensure our pasts don't dictate our future? Sophia's question hung in the space between them, a challenging yet welcome invitation to explore. James thought carefully. His voice steadied as he responded, "We acknowledge them first." He hesitated, weighing his own experiences against the potential insights he could draw from sharing them with her. "The gallery failed partly because my family failed to confront the issues head-on. I want to change that." Sophia's eyes sparkled with curiosity, and James could read the reflection of his own earnestness mirrored back at him. It galvanized him. He leaned further in, a newfound fierceness propelling his next words. "We need to completely dismantle the old ways. Different strategies, fresh perspectives. We can't tread over the same mistakes." She nodded slowly, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "And what flares up when we focus on the past? Fear," he admitted, the words spilling from his lips with unexpected weight. "Fear of failure, fear of intimacy. But confronting fear means we can harness it, transform it into something powerful." James noticed her nodding in agreement, sparks of inspiration igniting in her eyes. A newfound energy coursed through him as he recognized the possibilities within this conversation, a melding of backgrounds that could birth something neither had anticipated. "Tell me about your struggle," she encouraged softly, her tone urging a deeper dive into the truth of their circumstances. His chest tightened, and memories rushed forth. "I've lived in the shadow of expectations," he confessed, his voice a whisper now, "and the deep-rooted need to prove myself. My mother envisioned the gallery flourishing. I felt that pride burdening me." Sophia leaned in, closer now, compelling him to continue. It was as if in her unwavering gaze she had become a mirror for both connection and vulnerability. "At times, I felt like I'm chasing someone else's vision," he continued, "and it paralyzes me when I can't live up to it. What if we redefine that vision? Not as a burden, but as an exploration," she challenged. The suggestion danced in the air like the aroma of freshly brewed coffee around them. "Exploration," he echoed softly, letting the word settle. "That's a powerful notion." He felt a shift, both within himself and in their dynamic. What if they didn't just want to revive the gallery but also explore their own boundaries? James had always had a penchant for art, but never thought of it as an avenue to self-discovery. What if this partnership could be about more than just the gallery? Could it plunge into the complexities of his own identity and aspirations as well? As they began sketching ideas on napkins, the cafe noise returned, grounding them again. But this time, there was a buoyancy in the air, the tangible promise of possibility woven into their dialogue. James realized that as they faced their fears and uncertainties, the shadows that clung to him began to fade into the background, just like the remnants of a half-formed dream. Yet as the conversation flowed, the original angst knotted in his stomach reemerged. With every plan they sketched, with every possibility they unveiled together, he faced a new worry. Could he handle the emotional decrees that came with this collaboration? Just then Sophia bit her lip, looking thoughtful. "What happens when we dig deeper? What truths might emerge that could shake us both?" James felt his heart thud against his chest. Was he ready for those truths? As their ideas flourished, a deep-seated fear of intimacy loomed. Would he falter when exposed to the raw honesty of their journeys? In that moment, as their laughter painted buoyant strokes on the canvas of their aspirations, he realized the moment had come to face not just the past, but the revelations that awaited him, both personal and shared. The raw vulnerability of the journey ahead began to unfold like a long-forgotten masterpiece waiting to be resurrected, and as they crafted their vision for the gallery, James felt the thrill of uncertainty propelling him closer to the edge of genuine connection. What new layers of himself might this exploration reveal? Would he fall into the abyss of emotional chaos, or would he rise to conquer it? The next morning, the light barely spilled through James's curtains, but he was already awake, his mind ruminating over the previous day's conversation. The styrofoam cup with cold remnants of coffee sat neglected on the desk as he paced the small space of his apartment. He was on the cusp of rediscovering himself, and yet an invisible weight pressed down on his chest. Was he truly ready to expose his deepest insecurities? As the sun climbed higher, he forced himself to sit at his worn oak table, staring at the scattered napkins filled with ideas. The faint echo of Sophia's laughter still hung in the air. They had floated through possibilities, igniting sparks of hope, yet the vision remained indistinct. How could they articulate a passion driven not by fear but a true desire to create? The idea of the gallery was not merely a business. It had morphed into a symbol for James, a crucible where he could forge a new identity. He had seen art as a refuge, a silent witness to his struggles. But now, it posed as a challenge, an invitation to strip away the facade he'd built. Could art help him navigate the minefield of his emotions? James picked up a napkin and traced the abstract sketches frantically scribbled hours earlier. Each line represented an unaired vulnerability, each curve twisted into an uncharted path of potential. He needed to uncover not just an artistic vision but his narrative within it. With a deep breath he began drafting a list, not of goals, but of fears. 1. Fear of failure. 2. Fear of judgment. 3. Fear of intimacy. Each point curled around his mind, stirring an insatiable urge to confront them. What if he brought these fears into the light, not only for himself, but for the gallery and Sophia? Their partnership erupted from the depths of shared uncertainty. Could embracing these fears collectively fortify their foundation? His heart racing, James grabbed his phone, tapping nervously. A text to Sophia felt daunting yet essential. "Can we meet today? I want to discuss something important." The message flitted into the digital ether, unleashing butterflies in his stomach. Minutes turned into hours, and the cacophony of self-doubt filled the spaces where anticipation should flourish. What if she didn't resonate with his desire to openly confront their struggles? Just as he began to spiral, another vibration from his phone jolted him back to reality. Sophia's reply brightened the screen. "Absolutely. I'm excited to dig deeper today." A surge of relief washed over him. Together, they would wade into the murky waters of honesty. Art could be transformed into a lens, offering clarity not only of the works they would showcase, but of their own selves. It would become a dialogue of their experiences, painful, yet liberating. By the time he stepped into the cafe once more, he felt a tremor of confidence ripple through him. There was something magnetic about Sophia, an energy that made him feel seen. And risky as it was, he wanted to be vulnerable in return. Perhaps in sharing their truths they could reforge their paths and in doing so reshape their destinies. As they sat across from each other, a palpable tension wrapped around them, each waiting for the other to break the silence. "What do we want this gallery to symbolize?" James posed, the gravity of the question hanging between them, daring them to peel back years of self-imposed restraints. Sophia leaned in, her eyes glistening with anticipation. "I think it should represent growth. Our growth. We need to tackle what scares us the most." James felt a rush of warmth surge through him at her words. This was more than a collaboration. It was a partnership deeply rooted in the desire to change and thrive. But as he began to speak, another layer of fear surfaced. What if their confrontation led to revelations that could destabilize everything? Just as he opened his mouth to respond, the cafe door swung wide, and a well-dressed man strolled in, exuding a commanding presence. James's pulse quickened as he recognized the face from the past, a figure whose influence had loomed over his family, a reminder of every burden he sought to dismantle. The man's eyes locked onto James, and in that moment, a wave of unrestrained anxiety surged up, dredging up unresolved tensions. The moment had arrived to not only confront himself but face the ghosts of his past as well. Would his fear of judgment from this unexpected confrontation derail the progress he hoped for, or could he channel that anxiety into something transformative? The air in the cafe grew thick, tension coiling like a spring around James's chest as he met the gaze of the man who had once loomed large in his life. It was Daniel, his former mentor. The honor and respect James once felt now festered into resentment. Years of unheeded advice, mentorship turned judgment, and pressure that had shaped his every decision. Daniel's sharp suit and arrogant confidence felt like a direct affront to the new identity James was tentatively piecing together. James's grip tightened around his coffee cup. He could hear the faint thud of his heart echoing in his ears. This wasn't just a chance encounter, it was a reckoning. Would James stand and confront Daniel, or allow that invisible weight of judgment to bury him beneath past expectations? He felt Sophia's quiet presence beside him, anchoring him, urging him to tap into the resolve he had stirred earlier. "James," Daniel greeted, his voice smooth like polished marble, yet laced with condescension. "I didn't expect to find you here. How's the art world treating you?" The question was loaded, each syllable a reminder of the lofty goals that James had once discarded in favor of stability. Fighting the instinct to back down, James chose to face the onslaught head-on. "It's evolving just like I am." The words came out sharper than he intended, but the energy rippled through him, a small victory in that moment of confrontation. Sophia glanced at him, a knowing smile passing between them, a silent agreement that this was not just about art, but about self-discovery and reclamation of autonomy. It was a crucial turning point. Behind that moment, a growing determination emerged. "Oh, is that so?" Daniel stepped closer, feigning interest. "Art can be a funny thing, can't it? It requires quite a bit of courage and talent." There it was, the underlying challenge, a direct jab at James's efforts. James could feel the warmth of the cafe machines against the cold knot of anxiety twisting in his stomach. "I believe it requires honesty more than anything else. The courage to be vulnerable, to show the world who you are." As he spoke, James realized that he was not just defending his choices but asserting his own narrative. Daniel's expression flickered, an imperceptible shift that unnerved James. It was as if the other man was grappling with something beneath that steely veneer, perhaps confronting his own fears, albeit unwillingly. "Vulnerability?" Daniel echoed, the word seeming foreign to him. "In business, you have to shed that. Be sharp, decisive. Weakness does not lead to success." At that moment, James understood. Their paths had diverged fundamentally. Where Daniel saw business as a battlefield, James was recognizing his craft as a canvas where emotions converged. And yet, that's where true connection begins. The gallery symbolizes a space where raw emotions can bond with creativity, where we can challenge the fears that hold us back, not just the art, but ourselves. The cafe buzzed around them, but within their bubble, the air crackled with something heavier. James could feel it settling deep in his bones. For the first time, he felt his past disintegrate slightly under the weight of his words, and Daniel's confident facade wavered as if he was starting to see James for who he was becoming. The intensity of the moment swelled as Daniel chose his words carefully, an expression of resolve crossing his features. "You might find that vulnerability leads to more than connection. It can open doors to failure." There was a challenge in that warning, but James also saw a flicker of concern, as if Daniel was wrestling with the specter of his own unfulfilled potential. As James prepared to respond, he felt Sophia's hand placed gently on his. In that fleeting touch, she reminded him of their shared journey, their mutual development amidst fear. With each breath he found clarity, not of vision alone, but in embracing his narrative with courage, shaping it from the very vulnerabilities that had previously held him down. The moment of vulnerability lingered in the air as James turned to Daniel, ready to confront the ghosts of expectation. But as he opened his mouth to speak, the door swung closed on possibilities of retreat. Daniel's eyes hardened slightly, and for the first time James noticed the depth of uncertainty in the man who had once been so assured. "James, the time has come for you to face your truth. If you want this to work, you need to be prepared for everything it may unveil." The weight of those words loomed heavy, but James stood tall, forcing a resolve he didn't know he possessed. His past was no longer a towering figure, nor was it a barrier. It was merely a chapter he was choosing to conclude. With newfound tenacity, he prepared for the next step. Now was the time to confront all that he had built, and break free of the specter of judgment that had hovered relentlessly. a choice that could redefine everything. What awaited him after that decision remained unknown, but he felt the tremors of change beneath his feet, ready to take on whatever was to come next. James felt the weight of the cafe's atmosphere shift as he wrestled with the words that hung unspoken between him and Daniel. Vulnerability was one thing, but standing his ground was another. He realized that the moment presented a rare opportunity, not just to defend his choices but to redefine the trajectory of his narrative. "Facing my truth," James said, his voice steadying, "means acknowledging what I've learned and choosing to lead my life on my terms, not someone else's." For a brief moment Daniel appeared surprised, even taken aback. The facade of authority he wielded so confidently seemed to crack, revealing an uncertainty that mirrored the doubts James had faced for years. It was a shifting dynamic, one that stirred a mixture of emotions within James: anger, clarity, hope. He could feel the heat of self-doubt rise and fall within him, the voices of the past wrestling for dominance. "What do you think you're doing here, James?" Daniel's tone was dismissive, yet beneath it lay a hint of desperation. "You're going to throw your future away for the sake of emotion?" James took a calculated breath as adrenaline surged through his veins. Each heartbeat felt like a drum, marking time for a new chapter that had begun. "Emotions aren't weaknesses, Daniel. They drive creativity and connection. I've realized that ignoring them was what led me astray for so long." Sophia's presence remained grounding, her gaze fierce with solidarity. She was someone who understood the journey, the targeted pains and tiny victories that lay along the winding road to self-actualization. As the brewing storm of confrontation only intensified his energy and focus, James leaned further into his truth, feeling the barriers of fear begin to fall away. "You're romanticizing failure." Daniel's scoff echoed in his ears, yet it felt fleeting, a whisper against the growing storm of resolve within him. "Without a plan, without strength, you're nothing." In the face of Daniel's unfaltering belief in traditional success, James recognized the clarity of his own purpose. It was time to dismantle the tightly held notions of what success meant and create a definition that aligned with his values. "I'm not romanticizing failure, Daniel. I'm embracing growth. I'm choosing to value my journey, every triumph and setback, because they make me who I am." He felt the energy shift once again, returning to him with renewed vigor. He was leaving behind the ghost of an identity forged in rigidity and judgment. Daniel's glorified past began to seem insignificant against James's blossoming realization of self-worth. James held his ground against Daniel's piercing gaze. Each word he spoke became a brushstroke on the canvas of his burgeoning identity, illustrating the vivid truths of what it means to pursue authenticity in a world that often champions hollow success. "What will it take for you to see that, James? To understand that you might be sacrificing your potential?" Daniel's challenge was a desperate attempt to reclaim control, but it struck James differently now. "Perhaps you're afraid of acknowledging that creativity stems from our vulnerabilities and imperfections," James countered, a bolt of courage piercing through the last remnants of fear. "Maybe, just maybe, that's where we discover the most about ourselves." The sound of the cafe faded as they locked eyes, each word a revelation and a challenge, each nuance revealing deeper layers of both men's insecurities. It was exhausting, yet exhilarating, this dance of discourse moving them toward an uncharted realm. As Daniel's composure visibly crumbled, James felt a sense of exhilaration surging through him. However, with this newfound strength came an unsettling reality. Confronting Daniel wasn't merely about personal victory. It was the hard work of navigating the emotional terrain of his past that still loomed ahead. And there it was, the parting whisper lingering in the air, the realization that he was still on the precipice of authentic self-discovery. The journey into understanding what failure and success meant, deeply rekindled by this confrontation with Daniel, would unravel quickly, pulling at lingering threads of doubt and ambition. Both men stood at a crossroads bearing the weight of their decisions ahead. As Daniel opened his mouth to respond, the atmosphere thickened again, tension crackling through the air. What would he say next? The true test of James's courage had just begun. It was only a matter of moments before the definition of success and failure, a pivotal moment for both their paths, was laid bare, threatening to reshape everything they believed. James's heart raced as he observed Daniel's expression shift from defensive aggression to a vulnerable uncertainty. The cafe around them faded into a distant hum. The only sound that mattered was the ringing clarity of his own voice. It reverberated off the walls and echoed within him, grounding him in this transformative moment. Every time I fell, I thought I was weakened, he continued, pushing through the tension. But now I realize those moments were actually the catalysts for growth. Isn't that what truly matters? Daniel's lips curled into a sardonic smile, but there was a flicker of something else, an unease masked by bravado. That's all nice and poetic, James. But how do you plan to take your emotions and build a future with them? You need a strategy, not a daydream. The challenge stung, yet it was a call to arms. Hadn't he spent years detached from his creative self, driven only by the fear of failing? What if I told you I am the strategy? He responded, conviction threading through his words. What I've lived through, every hardship, every laugh, they're all blueprints for the journey ahead. Sophia's unwavering gaze bolstered him. He could see her admiration and trust reflecting in her eyes. It uplifted his courage as he spoke. This realization was changing him, not just in the moment, but as a trajectory for his entire life. Creativity isn't just about having the right ideas. It's about resilience, he stated, embracing a newfound clarity. It's about understanding that vulnerability is strength, and it fosters innovation. Without it, we become stagnant. James watched as Daniel's facade shifted, surprise and skepticism clashing in his expression. Daniel was used to shaping narratives, rigid in his perspectives of success. The fragility of his authority was starting to crumble under James's resolve. Perhaps there was a deeper fear governing Daniel's spectacular show of control. But what does that even look like in practice? Daniel countered, raising an eyebrow, his voice dripping with condescension, scoffing inwardly at the judgment. James took another breath, visualizing the possibilities of his path ahead. It means creating, learning from experiences, and surrounding myself with those who understand that authenticity fuels progress. I refuse to continue to ignore who I am because I'm afraid of what others might think. With each passing moment, the air between them thickened with challenges tossed back and forth. A battle not just of wills, but of identities. It was a struggle reflected in James's own psyche. The nagging desire for approval versus the urgent need for authenticity. He had the potential to emerge victorious not just against Daniel, but against the pressures that had oppressed him for too long. For once, he was no longer willing to yield to a definition of success that didn't resonate with his authentic self. Maybe, James said, his eyes steady. The real question isn't how to turn failure into success, but how we can redefine success altogether. That notion lingered in the air, unnerving yet liberating. The reality of what Daniel represented, stagnation anchored in fear of vulnerability, was now glaringly evident. Their paths were diverging, and it was a loss he felt deeply for Daniel, yet exhilarating for himself. The cafe buzzed softly around them as James allowed the words to settle. Each syllable had significance. He was carving out his existence in bold strokes, reclaiming his narrative, one confrontation at a time. It was clear now. The fight wasn't over. Daniel's stony silence prompted James to posit. Who do you want to be moving forward? The man who hides behind authority, or someone willing to embrace the depth of human experience? Silence fell thick once more, pressing his stiff fingers between them. The choice loomed ahead, a pivot point in their lives that could unravel the tightly wound narratives they had each held on to. James's pulse raced as the moment urged him to dive deeper into this confrontation. It was a question that demanded an answer. Would Daniel embrace the vulnerability that fueled creativity, or would he remain shackled to his fears, potentially losing the chance to reshape his life? The uncertain answer hung in the air, pregnant with tension and anticipation. As the clouds of doubt gathered, James braced himself for whatever confrontation would follow. knowing full well that the next chapter of his transformation depended on the outcome of this critical moment. Daniel's silence stretched, thickening like a heavy fog around them. James's heart pounded, half from the exhilarating confrontation, half from the uncertainty that swirled like leaves in a storm. He was acutely aware of the cafe's distractions, the clinking of cups, a couple's laughter in the corner, but they faded beneath the weight of this pivotal moment. Finally, Daniel broke his silence, though it was laced with hesitance. "You really think vulnerability is strength?" His tone was less condescending, more curious, which tugged at the strings of hope in James's chest. "Yes," James replied, the conviction in his voice steady. "Vulnerability is the cornerstone of innovation. It allows us to connect, to create authentically. If we stay locked away in our fears, we're only producing echoes of others' ideas." James observed the subtle shifts in Daniel's posture. The rigidity softened just a touch, but the walls remained. The battle wasn't over yet. What Daniel saw as a threat might be a chance for both of them to redefine their realities. "What if you let down the facade?" James pressed, his tone intimate yet fierce. "What could that unlock for you?" Daniel shifted in his seat, narrowing his eyes slightly. "Why should I take advice from someone who's just figuring it out? You're still a work in progress." Those words landed like a punch, striking the deep-seated insecurities James had wrestled with for years. Still, rather than retreating into defensiveness, he recognized this as a critical turning point. "Maybe that's the point," he replied, leaning in. "I've realized that progress isn't linear. I think I've been trying so hard to seem successful that I forgot what real success looks like for me." The idea landed with such surprising clarity that even James startled at the intensity of his own conviction. He was no longer interested in appeasing societal standards. The desire to conform, to excel at someone else's game, faded as he focused on the merit of his journey, the true essence of who he wanted to be. Daniel's expression betrayed a flicker of vulnerability. "And what if you fail? What if all of this authenticity leads you nowhere?" James felt an exhilarating rush. "What if failure is exactly how I find my path? Every no leads me closer to my yes. I don't have to pretend to fit into anyone's mold anymore." He was surprised by how clear his vision had become. The scab of his past was peeling away. The scars remained but no longer held him hostage. "I've been afraid of taking the leap," Daniel admitted, frustration rising in his voice, albeit softer now. "What if it means losing everything?" There it was, a crack through which possibilities dared to stream. In that moment, James knew he had to extend the invitation. "If you're willing to embrace your mistakes, it means you've started a creative process. Few are brave enough to attempt. You could pivot. You could evolve." Daniel appeared lost in thought, wrestling with the invitation to open up. James took a deep breath, suddenly aware of his role here, not just as a challenger, but as a potential ally for Daniel's own metamorphosis. The gravity of the conversation weighed down his shoulders, yet an exhilarating thrill coursed through him. Suddenly, it struck him what the culmination of this moment represented. Not just a dialogue over coffee, but a genuine connection that might resonate beyond these walls. "Daniel," James ventured carefully, "what if we collaborated? You have insights, resources. I have creativity and resilience. We could reshape our paths together." Eyes wide, Daniel's breath hitched slightly. The challenge now lay not merely in accepting the invitation, but also in discerning whether he could dismantle his own walls in the process. James watched the flickers of internal conflict dance across Daniel's face. In that instant, the echoes of past failures faded further into the background as hope surged forward, pulling them both closer to a shared potential that felt electric. Yet as the moment hung dangerously close to a resolution, a shadow loomed. Daniel's history was a wall built over years, and James knew now how easy it could be to slip back into established patterns. "Will you take that step?" James whispered, heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and dread. A question loomed larger than any previous challenge. As Daniel's eyes searched his face, pondering the impossible possible, James's soul hummed with the weight of what this could mean for them both. James felt the moment stretch into an eternity, an electrifying pause punctuated by Daniel's indecision. It was as if time itself held its breath, waiting for the answer that could redefine both their futures. The cafe around them hummed with life, yet they existed in a separate sphere. The world shrunk to just the two of them in the weight of unspoken possibilities. "Why does that matter to you?" Daniel finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Part of him seemed to be shrouded in skepticism, but there was an undeniable curiosity swimming beneath his words. "Why should I care about being authentic?" James's mind raced, the response swirling through layers of thought and emotion. Authenticity wasn't just a trendy buzzword, it was the compass guiding him through his tumultuous journey. The path of relentless striving and societal acceptance had left him drained, while the journey toward his own truth was invigorating. "Because authenticity is freeing. It's a reprieve from the burdens we carry," he replied, leaning forward, intent on sparking a connection. "When we stop pretending to be someone else, we invite genuine relationships that can lead to unexpected doors opening." Daniel's brow furrowed in thought. But to be authentic means to show weakness, to risk judgment. That's terrifying. James seized the moment, his words flowing as if effortlessly woven from a deeper understanding. Yes, it is terrifying, but what's far more terrifying is living a life dictated by fear. Fear of judgment, fear of being vulnerable. What if that vulnerability leads to amazing partnerships, groundbreaking ideas, and authentic connections? The fear of failure should pave the way for innovation rather than imprison us. Watching Daniel grapple with this idea was exhilarating. Each flicker of interest in his eyes was a sign of his internal struggle, one that James could relate to all too well. He had spent years battling self-doubt, feeling like an imposter in his own skin. And now here they were, locked in a dance that might finally push both into uncharted territories. If we collaborate, I refuse to pretend," Daniel acknowledged, and it felt like a victory within the uncertainty. "Will you be patient with me as I wrestle with this?" James's heart swelled. "Absolutely. This isn't about perfection. It's about progress. As we face our fears together, we'll carve out room for both our failures and our successes. Each step back should teach us how to leap forward." The intensity of the moment deepened, shifting from a challenge to a newly forged alliance. Daniel's guarded expression softened as he weighed the balance of what this might mean. "Maybe I've been waiting for someone to challenge me to take that leap," he whispered, a hint of acceptance sneaking into his tone. Encouraged by this evolution, James felt a shift inside himself as well. Sharing these thoughts not only invited Daniel to embrace vulnerability, but also solidified James's own commitment to his path of authenticity. It was intriguing how two men, once mired in societal expectations and personal insecurities, might forge a collaboration built on the very aspects they had feared. "Let's brainstorm our vision," James urged, leaning back to create space for possibilities. "It's time to unlock what's been waiting in the shadows." As they began to outline their aspirations, spirits rekindled within the muted bustle of the cafe, a burgeoning sense of partnership that thrummed with potential. But a nagging thought flitted through James's mind. Like the seeds of vulnerability they hoped to plant together, were they truly ready for the uncertainties these new ventures might unearth? In the excitement, a shadow from Daniel's past loomed over them like a storm cloud. The question still remained. Would he fully embrace this transformation, or retreat into the safe corridors of his previous identity when the winds of doubt began to blow? James sensed a tension building, not just between them but within the essence of their collaboration, a tension that had the potential to either unite or fracture them. Would they emerge from the fog stronger, or would the scars of uncertainty unravel their newfound bond before it had a chance to grow? The air crackled with anticipation as James thought of their first steps, both exhilarating and daunting. He couldn't ignore the unsettled emotions fluttering in his core. Suddenly, the cafe door flung open, and a figure rushed in, drenched and panting. What now? James wondered. A new disruption or a pivotal turn of fate? As the figure entered, the atmosphere in the cafe shifted. All eyes turned to the newcomer, a young woman, draped in a coat that clung to her like a soggy shield. Her breath came in quick bursts, and her face was flushed with urgency. "James Carter?" she exclaimed, scanning the room until her eyes landed on him. "Yes," he replied, a flicker of concern knitting his brow. "I'm Sarah. I work at the city council," she said breathlessly, stepping closer. "The Zeller Art Gallery. It's been officially recognized for a grant opportunity, a program to promote arts in the community. You need to apply." Shock raced through him. For weeks, James had been immersed in self-discovery, wondering if he had the strength to bring the gallery back to life. Now this opportunity hung in the balance of the air between him and Sarah. "Are you serious?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, but the application deadline is approaching fast. You'll need a solid proposal, a business plan, everything you've been developing. But if you're serious about this, it can mean everything for you. For the gallery." Her eyes sparkled with palpable enthusiasm. In that moment, a wave of elation surged through James, followed by a surge of paralyzing doubt. Was he prepared for such a leap? But no. This was what he had been fighting for, the culmination of the journey he had taken. "James," Sophia encouraged, sensing the turmoil brewing inside him. "This could be the moment we redefine not just the gallery, but everything we've talked about." With a deep breath, he began to process the gravity of Sarah's words and their resonance with his newfound resolve. "Right," he asserted, turning to her, a flicker of determination igniting within him. "When is the deadline?" 2 weeks, she replied, her excitement palpable. "But we'll need to get moving on this right away. You'll have to collaborate with a couple of local artists who've expressed interest in revitalizing the community through the gallery." A whirlwind of thoughts swirled in James's mind. He had fought through insecurity, faced down his fears, and now he had an opportunity, not just to revive the gallery, but to shape its future. "Let's do it," he said, a newfound confidence threading through his veins. "It's about time we make our vision a reality." Sophia beamed, her unwavering belief in him reinforcing his sense of purpose. "We'll gather everything, purpose, mission statements, and a plan that encapsulates our authenticity. It starts now." They turned their intentions toward Daniel, who remained silent, the impact of James's transformation evident in the way he held himself. "Are you in?" James asked, a challenge and an invitation. Daniel stared into the depths of his coffee, the weight of the moment settling heavily on his shoulders. The path ahead for him would not be easy. Embracing vulnerability was no small feat. But seeing the spark of newfound ambition in James, he felt the tides shift slightly. "I think I am," he finally said, his voice steady. "If you can put everything on the line, then I can too." And just like that, the shadows of their pasts began to lift as they directed their focus toward the future. They had all grown, each carrying the pangs of doubt but eager to break free from them. That afternoon they worked fervently, huddled around a table with coffee cups in hand and notebooks scattered across the surface. The goals were ambitious, but each detail they crafted, each dream sketched into reality, represented more than just a grant application. They were breathing reinvention into the gallery, and in doing so, they were also claiming their identities. James found his voice stronger than ever, realizing that this project encompassed not just the gallery, but who he had become through the ordeal of self-discovery. Let's highlight how personal experience drives creativity. Our narratives are the soul of this gallery. As they flexed their collaborative muscles, the mix of fear and exhilaration propelled them forward. Every proposal section capturing the essence of who they were becoming together. And as the hours ticked away, a sense of completion filled the room. They were no longer just individuals battling uncertainty. They were a unified force, crafting a vision for the gallery that reflected their collective resilience. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting amber hues through the cafe windows, James felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. They had come so far from the cautious confines of that first meeting. He was no longer just a teacher burdened by his past, a rekindled dreamer and partner in this journey, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Finally, moving beyond the cafe, they stepped out into the evening streets, the city alive with opportunity. Are you ready to show the world the gallery it's been waiting for? Sophia asked, her eyes sparkling with optimism. Absolutely, James replied, solid confidence surging within him. Let's not just revive it. Let's transform it. As they parted ways that night with plans vivid in their minds, James knew he had conquered not only the residual pain of the past, but catalyzed a partnership that might redefine what they could accomplish. He had transformed from a man haunted by self-doubt to the confident steward of his own destiny, equipped to face challenges realized and unexpected. For every fear that had once oppressed him, he had found a newfound strength, a purpose fervent enough to embrace the expanding possibilities. Their journey had only just begun, but James was ready to claim the future. And now, you need to subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support our growth. Comment below to share your reactions and theories about this breathtaking conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative ending.